Part of life.
Part of
And town. FLC. Council.
So,
2020. And town election. FLC.
Wow.
I don't think people are kind of creepy.
The YouTube thing that I can't find the I know.
There you go.
You just asked Chuck. Is that what you said?
You've got- So,
I turned our microphone off.
We'll do council roll call,
That's just because I'm on the Zoom.
roll call.
school committee roll call.
Okay.
You can monitor the.
Hey, look,
questions.
it's going on. Separate, right?
That's
All right, that's the way it goes.
your other
And
personality,
one of you are
apparently.
gonna have to sit way up in front, so the teacher can watch.
I can do it too. You want to?
Yeah, well, that was the first 4 years of my life.
Answer that problem.
We good?
So it's town council, that's kept
Ready when you are, even when you are.
2020.
As they say, let's like this.
Are you in the right day? Okay. Did we do arrange for a
Chair's
flag
nice
this
and
time?
comfortable.
No, hold on, flag.
Oh, yeah, where's our flag? We got 3 out of 4.
Oh, we got one.
Here comes Sandra.
Oh, there it is. We're good.
Be another chair for Sandra?
Sandra?
You're there
Uh-oh.
next to Fred.
Who's here?
Okay.
Ah.
You're late, so you're in the hallway.
Right on time. Right on
Good
time.
choice. That was a good
Another
choice.
one. All the school department people apparently are parties.
You school committee member, people were down tardy. Chris is trying to figure out how he's gonna get home. Bridge.
We don't get a second alarm on it. Yeah.
I win.
Yeah.
Oh,
Are you good, Doctor?
oh, that's right. That's right.
I don't think it was the battery. We're good?
Good.
We can.
All right, welcome everyone to our December 11th Portsmouth Town Council meeting.
Couldn't figure out who was talking.
Give them an elbow to the right. Before we begin, I just want to go through an emergency evacuation plan. In the event of an emergency, exit the rear of the building. There's 2 exit signs. You would head out the front door to the left, and we would meet across the parking lot at the top of the baseball field. If you're in the front of the auditorium and you head out either one of these exit doors, follow the signs to the exit, out the door to the right, across the parking lot, and we'll wait at the baseball field, top of the baseball field for further instruction. Hopefully there will be no emergencies. If we could all now stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for our men and women serving in harm's way. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. This is a joint meeting. We are going to be discussing our legislative priorities with the town council and the school committee. So for those of you who are wondering why there are so many people here, that's why we got school committee with us tonight. Also, we are live streaming tonight. So anybody that's participating by Zoom, there's an icon, a hand icon for you to indicate you have a question. If you're calling in on your phone, *9 will indicate you have a question. *6 will allow you to mute and unmute your phone. If you're participating remotely or in person tonight, please state your name and address for the town clerk. That way we'll keep everybody on track. With that, we'll begin with our town council roll call.
Mr. Capson,
Here.
Ms. Abbott,
Here.
Mr. Gleason,
Here.
Mr. Hamilton,
Here.
Mr. Lebec,
Yeah.
Dr. Ryan,
Here.
Mr. Aguirre,
Here.
Ms. Copeland,
Here.
Ms. McDade,
Here.
Mr. Farber,
Here.
Ms. Blount,
Here.
and Ms. Scan.
Here.
Okay. So on to new business, well, President's executive summary. I do not have any updates under the executive summary. So we'll jump right into new business. And this again is our joint town council school committee legislative priorities for 2024. We do have our legislators here. We have Representative Cordran, Rep. McGaw, and Senator Ujufuza. Nobody else is coming in. Okay. So you all have a copy of our priorities. What I'd like to do is begin with the council priorities and we figured we doubled up on you. We'd give you last year's again and this year's. I'll just touch base briefly. Do you want to, we'll go through them one at a time. Do you have comments on, if you have any comments on them, that would be helpful for counselors. The first one under our 2024 priorities was to reinstitute general revenue sharing to cities and towns.
You want us to comment?
Only
One
if you
by
have
one?
comments.
Yeah, only if you have comment. I mean, these are the kind of, I mean, these priorities we try to, I think a lot of them are similar to what we've done in the
It's
past.
up to you and thoughts, so
What's
what's your
what's
pleasure?
the pleasure of the council? I mean, we've got the update, we've got the priorities, and you also have them. If there's anything specific that you feel is got a lot of potential, that would be great.
I just want to make a general statement because it applies to several of the priorities, is that right now, it's a great time before the governor submits his budget for you to work with the League of Cities and Towns and the Association of School Committees to build some coalition around your priorities to make sure the priorities of other districts, because obviously we need to do that in the House, in the Senate, and it definitely helps if the governor, and right now is the opportunity to get to the governor. So a couple of items like free school lunches and municipal revenue sharing, they have big price tags on them. And to have them come in after the governor proposes, that's a lot bigger challenge than if the governor were to insert them into his budget as one of his priorities. So I would encourage you all right now, between now and January 18th or whatever the date is, he has to give his budget to us to work that side of the process.
Already done. For the general revenue sharing, it's been done.
Okay, well,
It
that's
was
all.
follow-over from last year,
Yes.
but I'll give you help. It costs $70 million to refurbish the State House this year. So there's $70 million already in the budget to be able to fund the 58.5 million, the general revenue sharing for cities and towns. Notice I upped it by, 50%.
Okay, yes, last year was 39 million.
It was 39, yeah, well, since I didn't get the 39, I went for more.
Okay,
That way, maybe I'll get my 39.
we'll see. All right, so
Well,
that's the,
Rep. Cordvan, if I might. It is all well and good for us to contact the other cities and towns, but as you all well know, as representatives of this community, their priorities might be entirely different than ours. And no doubt, quite frankly, general revenue was in fact something of a boon to the smaller, wealthier communities, and something of a detraction as it came out of other funds for the urban communities. who needed it much more. So I think it is important for us to understand that the challenges you face, if you want to be at all relevant at the State House, is that you have to have, in fact, working operations with all of them so that they know you're not just looking out, as you are looking out for Portsmouth, but not just. You understand they have issues also.
Which is why the general revenue sharing helps every single city in town.
But not proportionally, and you know that.
It is proportional because it's done by residents, so we can stop arguing.
It's not done by, we can stop when you make your point. No, I don't think that's ever gonna happen, Keith.
Oh, no,
All
no.
right. No, general, I mean, it's the issue that I dealt with 40 years ago. All right. We are considered a wealthy community, and there's a reason for it. We are a wealthy community. A lot of schools have a lot more difficulty making general revenue. If it was doing only on population, isn't fair, period. Okay? Don't distract him, I'm talking. But in any event, let me just tell you, much more than general revenue, I would love to see mandatory school lunches. I cannot imagine anything more.
Less expensive price tag than the new revenue sharing proposal.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we have a
And a
difference
lot
of opinion here.
And a lot of support in the House, but we, just like what I just said, that is something I've had conversations with the speaker, and he really wants to see it in the governor's budget. And so I think there are a lot of communities.
Well, I'll saddle my horse and get up there and tell them. But no, I think that, regrettably, I think I was not aware, or I was not well for a while and may have missed this. But in any event, whereas per head giving of money to a community, every kid eats. And making sure every kid has a good lunch is much more important than almost anything else I can think of.
We have 2 bills in the House, and there's a lot of support for it. So if it is in the governor's budget, I'm sure the House is going to be enthusiastic to support it.
Can I do one more and then I'll stop? Generally, I want to congratulate you all. I think you've been doing a wonderful job. And I think in particular for the more existential things that I think we are facing, including dealing with getting alternate energy, getting good housing, all of those things I congratulate you on. I want to continue to support you. Those are my major issues, and I think they impact the town both specifically and generally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last comment.
Okay.
About $38 million for universal free lunch.
Between 20 and 40, depending on how the
How
bills are
much they eat.
structured differently.
In a $14 billion budget, $100 million should be easy to find. I've already found you 70. So
So we're not gonna,
I'm more than happy to email the governor directly. He'll ignore it, but I'm more than happy to email him directly. But finding $100 million in the budget to do both, piece of cake. Thank you.
okay, you're welcome. Oh, I wanted to say, I did have one more thing I wanted to, in the House this year, we have a new, the speaker has requested that we limit the number of bills we submit to 15, but that does not include town and school committee bills. So if there is, out of your list, if you could give us resolutions, that would be helpful so that we can make sure that, we get them in and they don't get impacted by the number of bills that Michelle or I are, already have in our basket to introduce.
And if I may make a comment to that point, if you're running up against your 15 limit, and there's something important that is needed for the town of Portsmouth, come to the council and ask us for a resolution.
Okay.
And
Sure.
we'll consider that.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that conversation, and I know Keith, you've been a strong advocate.
Put the mic.
You've been a strong advocate for this for a while. But just to reiterate, one of the recommendations that Rep. Corcoran had was to make sure that we're reaching out through the League of Cities and Towns as well. And it's, we obviously are advocating for Portsmouth and want to do everything we can to meet the priorities of the school committee and town council. But if the body as a whole hears from the League of Cities and Towns, that carries a lot more weight than if one community is advocating for something. So that's why we're just
Understood.
encouraging you to do that.
Thank you. I mean, as with respect to the other items, is there any other ones that some of these are similar to what we proposed last year. Is there anything on our list that you feel has a good chance of success?
So I wasn't sure how this was going to go, or if you were going to read through so that the members in the audience would know what the priorities were. But I will just talk about the ADUs to let you know that that is something that was on your list of priorities. There was legislation submitted last year to amend and further define what an ADU is. And so that conversation is ongoing. We recognize that there are some inconsistencies in current statute, and that there's some confusion not only in this community, but in other communities. And so we're still working with the bill sponsor and with lawyers. In fact, we have a call tomorrow with some legal representation on the wording of that. And so I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to come to some consensus and really clarify that ADU legislation.
What is an ADU?
An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit.
Thank you.
The priority that you have for updating the vital records general statute, that is something that Jen is working on, I know, and I think I've had that bill for a couple of years now, and I think Senator De Palma has the Senate companion bill, and the Department of Health and the archivist in the Secretary of State's office. I think everybody has come to a resolution because we've kind of gone around the wheel on this in the last couple of years. So I was really glad to hear that you guys have all come together on language that everybody supports. And I think this is actually going to be an agency bill this year, hopefully by the Secretary of State or the Department of Health, a stamped bill. So that should make it be a lot easier to move through.
Wait, Rep. Porter, just before you leave. You and I have talked in the past about, and I want to make everybody aware that the General Assembly does a lot of touting of the replacement of excise tax and that helping the taxpayer. And the business tax and tangible tax last year of the $50,000 helping the taxpayer. Neither one does. It was a one-time fee. There are no escalator clauses in either one of them. So the one-time, whatever the amount was, $2 million, whatever it is flat. It doesn't go up from the state. So it stays $2 million. So once that has been used or has been put in place, we get that $2 million, the rest goes back on the property taxpayers. So if there's an increase in taxes, it goes to the property taxpayers. Where in the past, if you had bought your new Porsche, you would pay a little bit more for your new Porsche than Mark would pay for his meter. Like a 1982 Honda, yeah. 83. So I think there needs to be a reworking of the excise tax bill and also the tangible tax bill to make sure that the property taxpayers in each of the communities is not being hurt by just pushing down the taxes.
The amount of money that you are getting back is state.
It's flat. It hasn't changed in the past 3 years.
Yeah. It is still money that is coming back to the town in lieu of that tax. So it is in fact money we are not taxing, and it is not entirely different than the car tax. It is money that is being generated and taken from the state coffers and returned to the town in lieu of us charging a property tax on it. I don't necessarily agree with any of this, but that's what it is.
He hasn't seen a tax he doesn't like, so we're okay.
Okay.
He's right.
So thank you so much for inviting us here. And I just want to say it's what a privilege it is to work with Rep. McGaw and Rep. Corcoran. I do want to be them when I grow up, even though I'm older than they are. So I just want to touch on a couple of them, of the priorities you listed that we haven't discussed yet. Number 3, the trade registration, I believe that's coming from our town clerk. Okay. Right. I've spoken to the Secretary of State and they've indicated that that is going to be a priority and that they will have it introduced on both sides. And at a minimum, I will be a co-sponsor. As for the number 5, relating to enhancing public safety and recruitment, I just want to say that I've started those conversations around developing these bills with the League of Cities and Towns, as well as the police chief in Bristol, who is the president of the Police Chiefs Association. I mean, basically what we're seeing is because of COVID and because of our aging population and the increased mental health care demands and the lack of primary care physicians, we are having to rely more on 911 to answer a lot of the calls for this kind of aid. And also climate change, more severe weather events will also be calling on fire and police to provide us more services. And as you all know, we have a shortage across the state of these kind of first responders. And so there is legislation that passed that wanted to help with recruitment and retention. They're listed on your list here, but they were not funded. So I think at this point, in fact, today, League of Cities and Towns is going to need to discuss how to go forward on these kind of bills. And so I'm hopeful we can do something because obviously we do need first responders. And then as far as the other, so I think that might be it on this list.
One more.
There's just one more item on the town council list, and that's related to ambulance reimbursements. And just to a quick update, last year there was additional money included in the budget. I know that the goal, and there was legislation submitted last year to get the reimbursement up to 90% of what Medicare reimburses. We are not there. We did get additional funding, which more than doubled the reimbursement rate for ambulances in this most current budget, and we're going to continue to advocate for that. But we're not there yet. And so this would be another one of those items where I encourage you all to be in contact with the League of Cities and Towns and the governor's office to include that money in the budget. But I think what we're probably going to see is some more incremental increases until we can get to where we need to be.
You know, if I may, the issue with regard to general practices, and I think that you obviously probably knew this long ago, when the legislation was proposed, the Obama legislation, it was recognized we did not have general practices enough to supplant emergency room visits. We just didn't. And we still don't. And in fact, it's, I believe, coming close to being a crisis in this country that we do not have general practices. Many people are going into more lucrative areas. That's the other kind of existential area that I think you folks really, hopefully, and I, you know, again, I think would be willing to give you any help, but we need to have GPs. That would limit the number of ambulance runs and, you know, help our hospitals out of emergency care and actually be wiser because people would get preventive.
So it wasn't on your list of priorities. However, it is on my list of priorities to raise the Medicaid reimbursement rates. The Office of Health Insurance Commissioner undertook a study, and the Executive Office of Health and Human Services has made a recommendation to significantly raise Medicaid reimbursements and thereby try to stem the flow of primary care providers out of the state, because you can make more money in Massachusetts and Connecticut. And so that is the retention and recruitment funding that we will see for healthcare workers, is to fund the recommendations for increasing Medicaid reimbursement, and I believe I might be the lead sponsor on that bill on the Senate side.
Thank you for covering our 6 that are listed here. There's one that's not listed that was brought up by our employees at Town Hall, specifically related to harassment via email, personal visits, phone calls, and disparaging remarks made against them and other employees. If there's anything you can do to tighten up or strengthen the laws to allow our law enforcement to target people who continuously harass, I know you guys are all attached to the email, so you know what I'm referring to. It would be greatly appreciated by not only our town hall workers, but I think every town hall worker in the state. They do not deserve to be treated the way they are and talked to the way they are. We get paid the big bucks up here to be talked to like that. They don't need it. Thank you.
I would very much second that.
That's the big bucks part.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
4218, can't get anywhere else.
Is there any other further comments from the counselors on the council legislative priorities? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the school board.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting us as well. The school committee met, discussed its priorities and approved them. I'd like to just give a quick summary for those in the audience who may all be following town council matters more closely than school. So I'm glad we have your ear as well as our legislators here. So our first legislative priority for 2024 has already been mentioned, and that is we would support the universal free breakfast and lunch. We've seen a real increase in delinquencies in student counts, particularly since COVID kind of plays a little havoc with the finances. It's important for education. Nobody wants to just deny a kid a lunch. So I think there's momentum for that, and we would be on board. The second one is state funding formula and financial concerns. This was a big issue last year. We took a $260K cut, or $252 ultimately. We went up to the State House and testified. We appreciate the work of our reps in this. But I think our big point this year is that more equitable funding is necessary, since some of the state's most affluent districts, and here I would include East Greenwich and Barrington, received the greatest percentage increases in state aid per pupil over the past 3 years. I mean, and we know why that has to do with some of the levels of funding, but what we're really looking for is that just like the town has a maintenance of effort, right? At the state level, we need to have a cap on these swings. So if there's a, perhaps no more than 2% or another reasonable number of increases or decreases, I mean, it would just help, I think, our superintendent, our finance director, in terms of budgeting, that it would be a little bit more consistent without wild swings throughout the years. So unanticipated cuts, significant increases make budgeting process more difficult for districts to manage, and ultimately have an impact on the educational programs for students. I know it was supposedly stated last year that we're slated for another big cut, that we had a little bit of transitional aid. So obviously anything you could do in that regard. High cost special ed. Obviously we ask our state legislators to continue to support increases in high cost special education categorical funds included in the funding formula. And just for the audience here, just for example, the 2023-2024 cost of out-of-district tuitions for Portsmouth is estimated to be over $1 million. And we typically receive about 100,000 from the state for high cost special ed. In Massachusetts, districts are responsible for a fixed amount, and then the state picks up the rest. So something to consider. Statewide transportation, it's broken. We'd like you to have at least a study to look at fixing it. They've been talking about it for years, and the system purportedly offering efficiencies has failed year over year to accomplish these efficiencies, particularly as it relates to costs. It's not cost effective, it's not efficient. So if you could support a study, and we'd be happy to put a resolution in on that. And then this one, I've already talked with Rep. Cortfriend a little bit. The ESSA, that's the Every Student Succeeds Act determination process. When students are placed under the care of Rhode Island the Rhode Island Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and are placed in a residential setting, that triggers what is known as an ESSA determination call to decide if the student should remain in their current district or transfer to the district of that residential setting. Districts have very little say in the final ESSA determination by DCYF. So when students are in Portsmouth, we are responsible for paying for the out-of-district tuition they require there. However, we have had situations where Portsmouth has had to continue to pay the cost of out-of-district placement even after, that's bold and capitalized, the student no longer resides in Portsmouth. These decisions impact our already constrained school department budget. I know you offered to set up a meeting, Superintendent Kenworthy, our special ed director, 2 thumbs up on that. So we ask our state delegation to push for a review of the ESSA determination process with a particular focus on giving districts more of a voice in how students are educated and clarifying the funding responsibilities. Our 4th priority, this is from last year as well, high-speed internet for Aquidneck Island, not really just a school committee issue, but with the online learning and homework, obviously it affects our families, so we would push for that. And then finally, we appreciate all you do, and we would just ask that you keep us informed of anything in a timely manner so that we can, come up and testify, and in particular, age-appropriate career development for a green and blue economy, school waste recycling, waste removal, and the green and healthy schools initiatives. We think maybe 3 things that are coming up. So we appreciate your comments, and we have staff here if you have any questions or would like some more information. Sorry to put you on the spot.
So we talked about school lunches, I think. I wanted to give you, Dr. Copeland, accolades for coming up and testifying last year, because I do think your testimony was instrumental in getting that new category for the transitional, that new category for transitional aid, I guess, or to slow down the swings, like you were talking about, and that will continue on. I did talk to House fiscal staff, so that category will continue. So, as if you see declining enrollment again this year, it'll be based off a different, high level number, but you will still be able to stay in that category, and it's 2 years. So then you can roll out to the next 2 years. So that's how it was explained to me this week. So I just wanted to thank you for coming up and doing that, because I think it really mattered. Because nobody else was testifying, but you did.
Okay, it was worth the commute and what was it, the 2-hour wait?
I think it really was, and I wanted to make sure you were publicly thanked for that. I call special ed. We had quite a few bills in the House last year, at least 4. I think the governor had put in $15 million was added last year, and that got us from times 5 to something closer to times 4. It is a finite pot of money, so it depends how many people are requesting reimbursement, but I think we're closer to times 4, and there is support in the chamber for doing more, so hopefully the governor will continue his efforts on that. Let's see, the broadband, that comment period just closed. So that is happening over at RI Commerce, as you noted in your, we'll keep an eye on it, but I'm not really sure at this point. But I do know that all 3 towns submitted comments on the island, so Newport, Middletown, and Portsmouth, and we're fortunate to have former Rep. Deborah Giro, who's from Jamestown, is sitting on the broadband commission now. And I know she called me asking for the town administrator's phone number, so I know she was doing outreach to the Aquidneck Island towns to make sure they got their comments in. So I do feel like we have somebody on the commission that's looking out for our interests. And I did talk to DCYF regarding that ESSA issue that you spoke about. And apparently there was legislation introduced back in 2019 before the pandemic. Apparently no resolution. There was not consensus around it, but I've asked the legislative liaison from DCYF to send me that legislation, and I'll send it to you all, and you can look at it. And if it's something you support, you can do a resolution, and I'll reintroduce it. But it is an issue. One thing DCYF was asking me, they told me, oh, well, when students from Providence, for instance, and I guess Woonsocket is the community that's most affected by these scenarios because they have a lot of kids being sent out of district. But he was saying if kids from Providence or Woonsocket were to come to Boys Town, because I think that's where we see this stem from, that they DCYF would have the vision of them going back and the goal of them going back to their home community. So they should be staying in their home school. And I was like, well, that's not what we've heard. When kids come to Boys Town, a lot of times that team that does that best, what's best for the student analysis frequently decides that Portsmouth's a better place for them to go to school. And that's how we inherit them or we adopt them as our own. But that's how the process works. And he was like, oh, he wasn't really aware of that. So we'll carry on that conversation as time goes on. And else there's. All right.
Just a quick update on the transportation as well. And yeah, we as House members are definitely aware that that is an ongoing issue. In previous years, there's 2 different proposals to address that. And my understanding is that they will continue to be introduced this year. So as time permits, once that legislation is submitted this year, I can provide you all with the House bill numbers so that you can determine which proposal you think would be better suited to the town, so that you can hopefully, maybe we can get a resolution from the school committee as to which proposal that you are supportive of. Again, if we can get some money in the governor's budget, that would be really helpful. But I will share all of that information with you as it becomes available so that we can continue to advocate for passage.
I'll just quickly add that I am going to be submitting a bill to make sure that there's more high-cost special education funding available, because the tricky situation we're in is that we need to advocate not only for Portsmouth, but also not appear to be greedy and taking from the city, the poor kids. So if you advocate for high-cost special education, you are helping both. So I think I will be introducing that bill. And then as far as statewide transportation is concerned, you're right, it is quite messy. Our former superintendent, Anna Riley, gave me a bill last year that could save hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Bristol Warren district, because they were paying for their students to be going to non-public schools in Providence. And so if there's specific transportation issues that you would like to see addressed that affect our town, I encourage you to come up with those kind of bills, because we certainly have the right to protect our own taxpayers.
Just a quick comment, as much for the audience, I think, as from our legislators or even the council school committee. I wasn't very involved in special education for a number of reasons, but anyway, there was a determination made at one point that roughly 80% of the people at the ACI had some form of learning disability. This is clearly a pay me now or pay me later type of situation, because if you get, and quite frankly, the very quick thing that happens with learning disabilities is you go from inability to learn to refusal, which is you become a behavioral problem. And when you become a behavioral problem, that strikes out in every direction. And therefore you become a delinquent or whatever you want to call it. Secondarily, I was involved with the town of Portsmouth at one point where we were fighting about all these kids being sent from other communities to us. Turned out that we actually had more outgoing than we had incoming. That is, we had a lot of kids going out of district in order to get learning disability or because they could no longer be helped here. So you understand a lot of people like to think that Portsmouth would not have these type of problems, but particularly learning disability cuts across all social economic boundaries. Rich, poor, whatever. The rich probably have more opportunity to deal with it themselves. The other thing about the special cost and the out-of-district placements, I used to deal with the whole group of families that basically, okay, thank you. I didn't know you wanted to hear me.
I don't, they do. I can hear you just fine.
Okay. It used to be, it is extraordinarily difficult for a parent to be working with somebody they very much love, their child, but who has some really strong learning disabilities. In particular, we used to do some out-of-state placements, and that means that the difficulty becomes multiplied. Their child is no longer within their protection in many respects. It is frightening. So, I mean, I think expanding that, and I will tell you that in my heart, but in my head, I believe that these things save money in a very short run, but certainly in the long run. They save all of the communities money because we have people, rather than being displaced and in difficult situations, we have people who are actively engaged in their community and bringing back stuff. Thank you.
Chuck, can you pass the mic down? Thank you. Fortunately, with this format, as opposed to meeting in the town hall, our audience really can't see what we're talking about, and I apologize for that. Good to see us in person and us again on the wall here. But there is, this is all the items on the agenda. I suggest to the council president that we at least run down by title what the objectives the town council is seeking to resurrect here with our reps, last year's and this year's. But I have a question for the Chair Copeland. On the last item regarding the age-appropriate career development, the school waste recycling and waste removal, and support the green and healthy initiatives, could you comment about what you're trying to accomplish there in the school, please?
So sure, these were all bills that were introduced or funded in some areas like the waste recycling. So we're just wanting to know if they're actually going to be doing more funding for some of this, the Green and Healthy Schools Initiative. Did somebody else want to say something? These are really just initiatives that were floated at the State House in various levels of either being passed but not funded, and that they've been talking about, and they would affect Portsmouth because we really do have ties to the green and blue economy, and we already are doing the school waste recycling, but we're not. That's composting, but we're not getting a lot of funding through that. I believe it's all grant funding. Is that right, Superintendent? Correct. And then the Green and Healthy Schools Initiative is the building initiatives and some of the budget that they're talking about funding to help with the buildings.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So just
I'm sorry, Emily.
Nope.
Emily?
Oh, sorry.
Emily.
Yeah, Mike.
Too many Emilys.
Just to clarify on Chair Copeland's comment that Governor McKee did designate Rhode Island as a tech hub, as a leader.
Emily, I don't think we can hear you.
So turn it on.
Just go close.
You gotta get way close on it. Yeah, just.
To elaborate on what Chairwoman Copeland said, that the governor designated Rhode Island as a ocean technology hub. And with that will be higher education opportunities as well as business opportunities, but there most likely will be secondary education opportunities to prepare our workforce to address climate change and the blue and green economy. I also wanted to make a comment that elaborates on the education. My notes. Improving the state education formula. We did have a workshop last year that went into detail. And I just wanted to clarify that as we probably know, the state aid formula combines net assessed property value, median income of its residents, and a measure of the students who meet poverty based on SNP. There has been an improvement in the poverty term in this formula, but we did discuss that Portsmouth does have a higher measure of students in poverty compared to East Greenwich and Barrington. Yet this state, you should know that the method of calculating students in poverty still needs to be tested. The new counting method adopted in fiscal year 2024 budget resulted in significant undercuts of poor students overall and wide disparities in counts among districts as compared to the prior method. And we are just not seeing a state aid match the communities that need. We are considered wealthy relative, but still we weren't able to have the state formula fully represent the students in need in our district. And I also would encourage an examination of the other terms, even median income and net assessed property values that Portsmouth really does suffer based on these calculations, and as well as the limits based on the 4% levy cap really restrict our state aid formula and the ability for our district's budget to bounce back. Thank you.
Just to follow up on Mr. Gleason's earlier point about the council legislative priorities. It's my understanding these, I was not at the meeting of, I believe it was November 27th. The council went through and discussed each of these items. I was not able to attend that meeting. I'd ask if any of the councilors had the specific, if this was their item or if this came from the town, on the town side through the departments, through the different departments, if they could just briefly touch base on each of the items. I think we already covered the general revenue sharing. That seems to be the hot topic almost every year. But if there's, for the other ones, the dwelling unit, business and trade, if anybody could just quickly summarize what was discussed or what our objective was, just for the public that was not available on the 27th. Mr. Rand?
No, that'll do.
Sure. Won't read the entire thing. Bottom line, revenue sharing, this is something that was discussed by Councilman Hamilton. This is something that it's called reinstate general revenue sharing to cities and towns. This is something that was in existence years ago. It was gone away with. So bottom line, if there's a state surplus of money, part of that money would go and be distributed to the cities and towns based on their proportional size of their population. Second one was relating to accessory dwelling units. There were a number of bills passed last year that are going to make this very difficult for the planners. So the planning staff is asking state legislators to adopt or advocate for reemphasizing clarification on the accessory dwelling unit. I know that the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns is picking that up as a priority. Business and trade registration, that was number 3, self-explanatory. We've been asking for this for years. It was passed in the House. We're looking forward to be passed through both the House and the Senate this year. This would create a centralized database of business and trade registration. Relating to health and safety, that was also discussed. Both the Department of Health and the Secretary of State agree with the proposed changes. There's a number of bills, suggested bills that would relate to this. This was put forth by the clerk. Put forth by public safety. This is in relation to enhancing public safety and recruitment and retention. This was discussed. We're having a serious problem throughout the entire state, recruiting and retaining public safety employees, bottom line firemen and policemen. And this would create some kind of incentive that could be implemented statewide to help support the retention of these public safety officials. And then the last one was relating to ambulance reimbursements. We're looking to get up to the 90% Medicaid reimbursement for ambulances. This directly affects the town. Obviously, we get more for ambulance reimbursement, but as adopted by the council 2 years ago, ambulance reimbursements goes into the public safety capital improvement fund, and this is the money that gets used to buy our ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. We're all set. Okay. Well, I do want to thank our legislators for coming tonight. I know you have very busy schedules. I think one of the things I got out of our discussion tonight was really that we have to continue to work together, build some consensus, get our colleagues at the League of Cities and Towns engaged, come up with some resolutions if that's what's necessary to further help our cause, and continue to just work together to try and advocate for the things we need accomplished here in Portsmouth. Very similar thing on the school side. If we continue to work together, hopefully we can make some good things happen. So again, thank you for your time tonight. It's always a pleasure to meet and to discuss our priorities. I know it's hard, and we come in with a wish list, and even if one thing comes our way, it's an accomplishment. So thank you. Any other closing remarks, council, committee?
Thank you. I'll make one comment. I know broadband was brought up. I know Cox has been a huge thorn in most everybody's side, but they are bringing fiber optics down. It is getting better. I think it's made it as far south as Mill Lane, perhaps. So it is getting better. Having competition on the island would be even greater. So if we can get Verizon to come on and have some competition to help them bring down the cost would be great.
With that, we're going to conclude our joint discussion. If I could just ask for just a 5-minute recess, it'll allow the school committee to exit. We can rearrange ourselves here. We don't know what to do. We're out of place. But thank you all.
Thank you to the town council.
Oh, you're good.
Appreciate the people of Portsmouth coming to listen.
Just roll it right over. Somebody else's fault.
It is. Got to be Emily's fault. That's why I can't plug in.
She wants to get away.